All right, good evening, everyone. It is 6:01 p.m. and we will call to order our February 27, 2024 Town Council Virtual Workshop to order. With that, I will turn it over to our presenter this evening. That'll be Heather Ramos. Heather?
Hi, Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I missed you all this month at the council meeting.
I don't believe
thank you.
We missed you too, Heather.
Thank you. So I have a brief presentation for you this evening. It's much shorter than the 4 hours that you need to sit through, but you can apply the time, which will probably about 25 minutes, 25 minutes, depending on the questions for this evening, to go over the topics that we'll touch on, which are, thank you, Robert. We're going to talk a little bit about your form of government in the town, and then we'll talk about government, the Sunshine Law, which are your meetings, the public records law, which governs your documents, and the code of ethics, which is voting requirements, gift requirements, and those types of things. All right, so one of the most important things when you start or when you're an elected official is to find out what your form of government is for the town. So the town has a council town manager form of government, and that's the most common form of government that you'll find in Florida. There's 274 cities that have that same type of government. So what this means, and this is specified and set forth in the town's charter in sections 3.02 and 5.09, is that the power of the town council is to enact local legislation, to adopt budgets, to determine policies, to create town departments, abolish town departments, and to appoint town officers, which include, in the town of Windermere, the town manager, the town clerk, department directors, the town auditor, and your town attorney. And also the town council has the power to exercise all powers, functions, and immunities granted to municipalities in Florida. One thing, or specific things, that the town council can't do because of the type of government you have, and this is also specified in the charter in section 5.10, is the town council as a whole or individual town council members cannot give orders to any subordinate of the town manager, publicly or privately, and the town council as a whole or individual town council members cannot appoint or remove a town employee. So in general, for the town council sets the policies for the operation of the town, and the administrative responsibilities are carried out by your town manager. Robert, do you think there's anything else that I need to address there?
No, when we get to the Q&A, I might have to bring up some scenarios or something like that relative to not only this, but some other areas you're going to cover tonight. Okay, great. All right, now for the Sunshine Law, this governs your meetings, and a meeting with purposes for the town means when you have 2 or more members of the same board or committee meeting together to discuss town business. That's the definition of a meeting. There's 3 basic requirements of the Sunshine Law. Meetings must be open and accessible to the public. Accessible means that if you've got too many people in town hall and they can't fit in town hall, then that's not an accessible meeting. That's the type of things that are meant by accessible. Your meetings must be noticed, and written minutes must be taken of each meeting. Sunshine Law is applicable to the town council and committees of the town council when a committee is delegated decision-making authority as opposed to mere information gathering or fact-finding. So some things to remember with respect to the Sunshine Law: if you've got 2 or more council members that need to discuss town-related business, you've got to officially notice the meeting and take meeting minutes. You shouldn't call, text, or email each other on town-related business. All discussions must be in an open, noticed meeting. You can't have a person act as a go-between or a conduit. Whispering and passing notes at a noticed meeting
could be considered an unnoticed meeting if discussing town business. So before, during, or once a meeting is adjourned, don't talk about town business in the back of the room, in the front of the room, anytime. Members of the public must be provided an opportunity to address the council during the decision-making process and before a decision is made, which is why you have your public comments. So we did talk about this a little bit a couple nights or a couple meetings ago. Someone asked me the question about council members attending committee meetings. I went ahead and put some citations in here from some attorney general opinions. And they basically, I think I said exactly what they say, maybe not in the specific language, but a council member may attend and participate in a committee meeting without prior notice of attendance. But what the Attorney General has said is if it's known that 2 or more council members are planning to attend and participate, it's advisable to note their attendance in the notice of the meeting. And the Attorney General has also said it's not a violation of the Government and Sunshine Law for elected city commissioners to attend other city board meetings and comment on agenda items that may subsequently come before the commission for final action. However, the city commissioners in attendance at such meeting may not engage in a discussion or debate about these issues amongst themselves. All right, meetings do not include if one of you wants to have a discussion with a county commissioner, discussions with a state legislator, discussions with a staff member, or discussions with another council member on matters that will never involve a vote of the town council. And Robert, do you want to do questions now if anybody has them, or wait till the end?
No, I mean, this is a good segue. A lot of the questions I have revolve around committees. You know, a lot of the committees, again, they're voluntary. So they do or do not know a lot of the Sunshine Law rules, even though we try to direct them where they can go. But when it comes to like an event, let's say, for an example, Pet Fest, are they allowed, once the committee approves the actual event, talk about amongst each other, you know, how many vendors should be there, parking issues? Because a lot of these events, there's a lot of issues that arise within the last 48 hours. Is that a Sunshine Law violation if they are say, you know, we need this or that when it comes to that specific event?
The best practice is to have any meeting that's talking about any type of town-related business in the sunshine. With respect to committees that are doing voluntary type work for the town, there might be instances where you've got something that has to happen, like you were saying, with respect to a quick decision about a vendor. I mean, those are cases that hopefully don't come up too often. If that is the case, then at the next meeting, then those things should be, the next meeting of that committee, those things should be disclosed, if possible.
Now, if they create a subcommittee to talk about creating bylaws or, you know, something that is maybe related to an event, is that underneath the Sunshine Law?
All committees or subcommittees that are doing town-related business, that are making advisory type decisions, that are not just fact-finding, are committees that are supposed to be operating in sunshine.
Another example is, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, really what the goal is to be able to let the public see how so for instance, how the bylaws are made from start to finish, from A to B. I mean, from the beginning to the end. That's really the goal. So the public has all of that. It's all done in the sunshine and it's all transparent.
Another example would be like tree board. If they want to do a site visit somewhere to take a look at which trees should come down, which shouldn't, in order to come up with maybe a tree mitigation plan, or if there's a project in town where there might be some impacts to trees and more than one tree board member is present, does that fall underneath the Sunshine Law?
The best practice there is to go ahead and notice the meeting, and it could be a tour or however it needs to be noticed. And I know Dorothy can help with that, but to put up the notice saying that you'll have 2 or more members of the tree committee visiting this site so that members of the public can attend and can listen, can ask questions, that kind of thing. That is the best practice.
Is there issues with chat, group text? When it comes to talking about certain things from a committee?
Yes, for committee and for town council. And there shouldn't ever be a back and forth about town business, because once you have, you can send out one email like you would do, Robert. But once you have a response from a council member, that's okay. It's when you have another council member respond, that can be considered a meeting, depending upon the subject or the topic that's in the email or text discussion.
Yeah, I mean, because it's voluntary, it's a lot harder to herd the cats when
Correct.
it comes to a lot of this stuff. So we try to be as cautious as possible. So when it comes to group chat, Snapchat, or anything like that, we'll make sure that our committee members know that that's not allowed, or especially if there's one or more committee members a part of that group chat.
Best practice is to make sure that, and a lot of times, sometimes people are worried about public attending or listening or wanting to be involved. A lot of times, if you have a committee that's going to, needs to discuss something simple, and Dorothy advertises it, you might not even have people show up, but then they've complied with the law and everything is open and transparent to the public.
All right. A couple more examples. Social media. If there is a post about a certain topic that is posted on Instagram, Facebook, I don't know if anybody uses TikTok, but what are they allowed to comment on, and should they comment on those?
So all of those, if anything is about town business, if it's on social media, it's going to be a public record. If one council member is posting about something and another council member responds, and then say another council member responds, you have what someone could argue is potentially a meeting, depending, again, like I said, on the subject and what's being discussed. So everyone needs to be very careful with respect to responding to another council member or a committee member responding to another committee member on town business.
Yeah, so if the chair of HPB sends a text to another chair or another member of HPB about a subject that is going to come up for town council consideration, that is something that would fall underneath the sunshine.
Yes, it could. Absolutely.
Okay. I see Mandy's hand up, and I think Brandy has some questions as well. We do have some committee members online tonight. I think there's like one. So Councilmember or Mayor O'Brien, I would leave it to your discretion whether to include those. But we'll start off with Mandy.
Thank you. No, my quick question is, like, for social media, I know lots of times, like for instance, I'm going to use Pet Fest because it came up. I tend to share that, or somebody might comment, what a great event, and I might comment the same thing. Is that considered a public meeting at that point? Because it was just talking about the event.
No, Mandy, that's okay.
Okay.
We're worried more about and for instance, if Robert sends out an email and says we need to hold a special council meeting, who's available at 4 o'clock on Thursday, and everyone responds back, every council member responds back to that email. That's a transitory message. That's not like a something that I'm trying to think. For instance, if you have a developer that's going to be coming before the town council and people say, oh, well, I don't want a hairdresser shop in that strip center, and you reply back and say, it's a good idea for this reason, and then you've got Brandy saying it's not a good idea for this reason. That's the kind of thing that you want to make sure that you're not doing back and forth type things on, which is actual business that's going to come before the council for action and discussion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And Mandy, another example, the pavilion, when somebody posts that they don't like the pavilion, they don't want the pavilion, and let's say that Mayor O'Brien says, yes, I agree, this is something I would never be in favor of, and then Councilmember Stroop gets on there and says the same thing, then that would definitely be a violation because that's a pseudo meeting between those two parties.
Got you. Okay, thank you.
Heather, is it best practice just to not reply all to any of those type of emails anyway?
Absolutely. A lot of times, and I know, Dorothy, I know you're really careful with it. Robert, I think you are too. I mean, I don't really see the messages that you send out, Robert, but one of the things that I do when I send out emails, sometimes I put the please do not reply all on there. Sometimes I BCC everybody. So if you were to reply all, that, you know, it doesn't go to anybody except me, that kind of thing. So it's just better practice not to ever reply all, for sure. Then you don't make a mistake.
Agreed. There are many folks who send out emails to all of the council, sometimes even BCCing those folks. For I don't know what reason they would do that, but maybe to, you know, just let everybody know. But at the end of the day, if you hit reply all, you are walking into the easiest trap on the planet, in terms of you know, accidentally making a mistake. You know, that could definitely be considered a sunshine violation. You know, and I try to always make sure that all council knows that when they come on, but the committees as well. So yeah, it's always very important to be very, very careful with that. Even so much as if you want to send something out to all of council, it's much better to use Dorothy, the clerk, to send it out than for you to directly send it out, because it could be interpreted as you saying, hey, we're on this side of the issue or that side of the issue.
Agreed. And one thing is, again, when we have a hot topic coming up, you know, we get a lot of input from residents and they copy everybody. The best practice is probably just put received if you need to respond at all.
Yeah.
Just show them that you have heard their comment or received their comment, and we'll take that in consideration.
Yeah. Or just, you know, create your own email and write the person who's not on the committee, if they're a resident and they want your input or they want to provide input to you, you can write them directly to do that. But yeah, it's just a very easy way to, and sometimes you see something and you're like, wait, that's not true. And you reply all, and before you even realize it, you're like, oh, that was silly. All right, cool. Brandy, and then we'll go to Frank.
Yeah, I have just a couple of generic questions, and then I have a really like kind of specific one just out of curiosity. But so for the generic question, so like if somebody, because I get a lot of questions from people that are new on, you know, committees. So if somebody wants to like send an information, say like to tree board, to all of the tree board members, like, hey, you know, do you know this is going on? I think we should, you know, have a meeting or whatever else. Should they just be strictly doing that through Dorothy? And is it okay to do that and find out if everyone's like allowed to have a meeting, or if they have other information, you know, basically that they're sharing, as long as they're not replying to all? Or should they, I mean, which way should they do it?
So Brandy, when you say that, do you mean when someone has the information, is that a member of the, for that example that you gave, is that a person, a member of the tree board?
Yes.
Okay, so the best practice is for that tree board member to either go to Dorothy or to go to Robert and say, hey, I'd like to set up a meeting about X, Y, and Z topic. That's the best practice. If the person is careful and they send out an email to the whole tree board and just to say, I'd like to schedule a meeting about this, and then you don't get somebody sending back an email going, oh yes, I really feel strongly about that, and here's my opinion on it. And then you've got these other folks tagging on, and that's the problem, that where you can have an issue, or when you can have an issue. If the person is just sending out an email to say, I'd like to schedule a meeting, that is technically okay. Because again, that's not business to come before the tree board, that's setting up a meeting.
Okay.
So, but I would prefer, I mean, if you were going to ask me, I would say, please do that through Dorothy, or please have the person should address Robert and say, you know, hey, this is an important issue. We need to set up a meeting, and then the management will schedule everything or set it up for you.
Okay.
Or for them.
A real world example would be, you know, if somebody's cutting down a tree on a weekend and you have 3 tree board members out there and they're discussing, fines or recommendations they would make to me, then I believe that would be a violation. So if they just report what the issue is, to myself, to chief, or, Tanya, then we'll be able to, rectify it and then take it to a tree board meeting.
Correct.
Okay, okay. So what about like if, and again, let's use tree board as an example. So what if somebody, I don't know how the agendas are made. So let's just say, somebody's making an agenda and somebody else has something that happens that they observe like over the weekend and it's still before the agenda has gone out. Would they just request that directly with Dorothy to be on the agenda, or does it have to go out to somebody on the committee to approve it, or things like that?
Robert, don't you make agendas for the meetings? I don't know what you do for the committees.
What we do for each agenda is we contact or we copy the liaison, Kristen, myself, Tanya, and then the chair of that committee. So if there's an issue that they would want onto the agenda and they're not the chairperson of that committee, they can just simply say, I would like to discuss this at the next respective board meeting.
Okay, so they would just send it to all of you and then you guys would make sure it's on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, now here's my weird specific question scenario. And this is just because we've had things sort of like this in the past. So we've had issues that are technically outside of town limits, like Bird Island or the northwest corner out there by Publix, where they were talking about developing it. And even though it's not in town limits, and maybe I'm kind of wrong here because my memory is a little fuzzy. This was like 5 years ago for some of it, but I seem to remember that like there was a general consensus, like, we're for this, we're against this, or like the 1 cent sales tax as a council. So if it's something that's outside technically town purview, but it's something that we might, I don't know, maybe vote on a resolution that we're in support of this, or we're in support of having the sanctions on Bird Island or whatever, how does that work?
As a council member or as a
council member?
Then you would request that they be placed on the agenda as a discussion item, and it would be specific to that council member to lead that discussion.
Okay.
There
Because
are
you wanna be-
scenarios. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, you want to be very careful, Brandy, and everyone else, if there are times or circumstances where you're gonna have like you said, Brandy, perhaps a resolution is going to come before the board. Perhaps you're going to talk about annexing the Four Corners or something like that could come before the board. But if it's something that's never going to come before the board for discussion, like talking to Mandy about where she went on vacation, that kind of stuff, I mean, then you're okay. It's just I would suggest being uber careful, ultra careful on things that could possibly come before the board, and then have a workshop or ask Robert, hey, how do we address this?
Okay. All right. Thank you.
There are also a lot of those situations come wrapped into different public. For example, the commissioner may have a public meeting about Four Corners. The commissioner may have a public meeting about Bird Island. Those are examples, and so there are opportunities to speak in public at a noticed meeting as well. So yeah, your opinion will get out there on those type of situations, but it can be with some differing modalities. So
if we were like when everybody went to the Bird Island meeting at the county, because a lot of council members were there, and you, Jim, are you guys, when you comment, are you commenting as the public, or I don't remember, did you guys introduce yourself as being mayor of the town, or in what purview are you commenting? Should you be commenting as a resident or as a, somebody representing the town?
Well, the mayor asked me to comment. The mayor of the county asked me to comment as the mayor of Windermere. So that's how I responded in a public meeting.
Okay.
There can be different ways, but you're certainly allowed to say that you're a council person from the town of Windermere here to address the county commission. There's certainly nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
Unless Heather tells me or someone tells me differently.
No, especially if you've had a discussion, especially if you've had a discussion at the council saying, you know,
Yeah.
this is our consensus on it, or, I mean, and you could even say, you know, the mayor can say, this is my feeling on it. I am the mayor, but this is my feeling. Or he can even say at the county, you know, 3 other council members feel this way too. That it's fine.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
So Heather, as another example, let's say that Commissioner Wilson's having a publicly noticed meeting about a certain development that is just outside of town that would create a lot of traffic. Can 2 council members show up to that meeting and voice their opposition or support?
At a publicly noticed meeting, yes.
Okay.
That's where, that was that one slide that I put those attorney general opinions up in. You know, if you can let them know in advance that you're gonna have 2 council members there, that might be nice, but it's not 100% necessary. It still complies with the law because it is a notice public meeting, so folks have the opportunity to be there. But our council members, our Windermere council members, should not talk amongst themselves in the audience about business. It's better, I mean, you guys can sit next to each other, but it's better not to be sitting in there whispering back and forth, because especially if you have the press there, it can just look bad.
Yeah, that's another thing is the appearance of impropriety to where,
Correct.
you know, you can socialize. There's no issues with that. But the minute that the discussion goes towards a specific town issue, it's probably best to either recuse yourself or just leave the conversation.
So that would have to be noticed on our website if we were going to attend a county meeting like we did back then, or on there?
It doesn't have to be noticed at
Okay.
all. It was just the
Technically.
attorney general said, you know, if you, what that one opinion was, Brandy, was the attorney general said, hey, if you've got 2 council members attending a town committee meeting, like if you and Tony were going to attend the tree board meeting, you know, if you can note it in there, like if Dorothy wants to say, hey, we've got 2 council members that'll be here, that's a good idea. That's basically what
Okay.
that attorney general opinion was saying.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Councilmember Devitt?
So Heather, you've been referencing town council. Just want to confirm the mayor is inclusive of that, correct?
Yes,
So
yes.
he's in the town council bucket, not the staff bucket.
No, he is a town, yes, he is the elevated chosen town council member that rises above the council, I guess. The supreme council
Rises
member.
above. I want to see
Wow.
that next council
Yeah.
meeting, by the way.
He does have a vote, so that's a tie-breaking vote, so that's definitely huge.
And
Yeah,
even
so-
if he didn't, yes, he would still be considered, the mayor is still subject to the requirements of the Sunshine Law and the public records laws.
Correct. I just want to clarify, because I mean, you've said town council several times, and I just want to make sure that the mayor is inclusive of that. So
Yes.
when and then discussing areas outside of the town business. So if the mayor and I hypothetically argue about US politics, that's okay.
Absolutely okay, and I'm sure it will be an exciting conversation. I'd love to hear it.
It's not hypothetical.
That is absolutely 100% okay.
The
Okay.
only risk, Tony, the only risk we have is if someone from Congress asks us in Windermere to vote on something, and I don't think they will. But it is
I doubt it. They don't
it's
even
a
ask
great-
our opinion.
it is a great point, because I think that there's some language in here, Heather, that speaks to anything that would reasonably come before the town council or something like that. Because there have been situations where, 5 years ago, you may talk about something that you would never dream would actually come in front of the council. And it may at some point come in front of there are some unanticipated things that come up for a vote that, I don't think anyone would have, maybe anticipated 10 years ago. So yeah, it's caution, I guess, is the word of the day, because there are things that do come up years and years and years later. So
Sure. And
and
I don't think
sometimes
you
you-
could be, yeah,
and
you
in
couldn't be
Wind-
faulted for that.
right. And in Windermere, sometimes you think you voted and it's dead and it comes back to life. So that's another one
Right.
you can watch out for.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Heather. Thank you.
Mayor, I have Manny David come back on.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
thank you.
And I don't want to forget about Frank either there. I don't mean to leave him hanging on the edge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, the conversation sparked another question about committee meetings. You know, us being liaisons, some of their stuff is coming before the board. So or us as town council. So my question is, you know, if let's say I'm Parks and Recs, I'm at a Parks and Recs meeting, and let's just throw it out there, another council person comes up or comes into the meeting. Because we're going to probably vote on something, is that just something we should stay away from? Just out of, I mean, not that I don't want them to be able to speak their mind at a public meeting, but it kind of puts us, it kind of gives me their thoughts to bring before, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like that's a conflict of interest. I just gonna throw it out there and ask it, because we are all liaisons to committee, you know, so for another council person to come to meetings, I feel like that's a conflict of interest. Just throwing it out there.
No, Mandy, and it's a good point, but the sunshine law is going to apply to, for instance, if you're the liaison and another council member comes, the two of you can't discuss something. And I understand what you're saying. It's more of an appearance of impropriety or an appearance of a conflict. It's not an actual conflict for another council member to come and talk about it. As long as the two of you don't talk amongst yourselves. Now, you might know in your mind what that council member is going to say at your next council meeting about it, but that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, we have Frank with his hands up still.
Frank, here you are, brother. Sorry.
Okay, hey, I've appreciate this ability to listen in here. Got a few things. If one of the committees, tree board, historic preservation board, whatever, has a work project, clean up the old schoolhouse, clean up the tree board trailer, can we just do that? You know, several committee members, or do we need to notice it?
So if you're going to do some cleanup, if you've got two or more board members together that are going to be talking about business that's coming before that, or committee members that are going to be talking about business that's coming before the committee, then you have to have a meeting. If you're just doing some cleanup and you're talking about what you're going to do for breakfast, where you guys are going to go camping, where your next vacation is going to be, that's okay. That doesn't need to be a noticed meeting.
Okay, so there are a bunch of things in the tree board trailer. There's old fertilizer in there. There are a bunch of shovels with broken handles. There's can we talk about, I mean, you know, should we throw away these shovels? Should we
Sure.
you know, we need to
Yes.
replace this fertilizer? I mean, stupid stuff.
I think you've got to use a little bit of common sense there. I really don't think there's going to be an issue with, oh, that fertilizer doesn't smell right. Let's get rid of it. Let's make sure we throw it away correctly so it doesn't get in the lake. I don't think there's problems with that.
Okay, thank you. And the agenda. So I'm the chair of the tree board. Thought it was my responsibility to make the agenda. I mean, I've watched agendas come together for three committees: the Historic Preservation Board, the Tree Board, the Long Range Planning. And the agendas come together in various ways, often poorly or not at all. So, you know, it seems like I'm responsible, I think, for putting together the agenda for the tree board as chair, based on minutes from last meeting, things that I know about myself, and I want input from other members of the board to add things that they think need to be discussed. So what's the best way to do that?
You either discuss it, Frank, during your committee meeting, your prior committee meeting, say, what would everybody like to see on the agenda for the next meeting? And perhaps if anybody has ideas after your committee meeting for other agenda items, they either send them to Robert or they send them to Dorothy, that type of thing. But there shouldn't be back and forth between you and a committee member on what should be on an agenda.
Okay, so if somebody says Robert or Tom Stroop or, you know, puts out an email and says, hey, committee members, what do you got? That's okay?
Yes, as long as we're not having Robert or Tom acting as a go-between. So if we've got a big list of stuff compiled and you, Frank, take the agenda and bring it forward, that should be absolutely fine. But we don't want to have Robert coming to you, Frank, and saying, hey, we've got one committee member who'd like to hear this because of this reason. And then you respond back to Robert and say, I don't want to do this. I mean, we want to make sure all of the discussions between the same committee members are out in the sunshine.
Okay, it still seems a little fuzzy to me, but I think I got it.
I think the best way to do it is just to get, like I said, you have a discussion at your committee meeting and say, what would we like to have, or what's important to have on our agenda next month. And you have all of those items on your agenda, and you have to make a decision as a board chair or committee chair as to how that's going to work.
Okay. And then how draconian is the system in terms of, you know, what if you just slip up somewhere and make a mistake? You're going to get yelled at, or you're going to be I mean, what is the history in terms of, you know, liability for legal action against a committee member?
There isn't any, unless someone is upset, someone being a member of the public who says, I am going to file a complaint with the Commission on Ethics, or a prosecutor. So, I mean, if you have a discussion, if you are having, I don't know, if you're in a grocery store, if you're having a glass of wine or a beer and you slip up and talk about something, if someone doesn't know about it and complain about it, then there's not an issue.
Okay, and sorry, I just to be clear on the project. So I want to clean up the trailer, the tree board trailer. So can I call another tree board member and say, hey, would you join me this afternoon? Let's just clean this thing up.
Sure. Yeah, there's nothing there that's going to come before the town or before your committee for action, I don't think. I mean, as long as if you go out and clean something up, I mean, it's like friends going and cleaning up your garage, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Heather.
And Heather, a couple more things. Can you explain what a conduit is?
Yes, a conduit would be somebody who is like a go-between. So for instance, let me think, Jim is standing at the water cooler in your town hall and says, hey, Robert, I don't like this proposed development that's going in. Can you please make sure that you let everybody else know? Or maybe it doesn't even have to be that obvious. And then you, Robert, you go over to Mandy and you say, oh, this proposed development, yeah, that's not a good idea. You know, I was talking to Jim and he said that he doesn't like it. Let's go. I'm going to go tell Tony that the two of you guys don't like it. And then maybe we all vote no at the next, or you should all vote no at the next meeting, that kind of thing. So no council members have spoken with each other, and the mayor hasn't spoken to any of the council members, but you have gone now back and forth and in between, and everybody else knows what the other council members or the mayor thinks.
Thanks, Heather. and since we have Annabelle on, what if the media reaches out to a certain council member or the mayor, and asks them for a position on a certain hot topic that's coming up that may come up for a town council vote? Are they allowed to quote what their position is going to be, whether for or against a certain item, knowing it's going to be published?
So each council member and the mayor have First Amendment rights to talk about town business and town things. However, a council member and the mayor should not be speaking for the town unless the town has said, Mayor, at a meeting, Mayor, we would like you to relay this position, or Mandy, we'd like you to relay this position. That shouldn't happen. You, Robert, are the spokesperson for the town. You're the only one who should be able to speak for the town. That's the way your government is set up, and that's a express power in your charter. Unless, like I said, it is talked about at a public meeting and the direction is given to someone. But with that said, Mandy can say, hey, I just don't like this, and I'm speaking, on my behalf as a resident of the town. Something like that.
Okay. Because I know that comes out a lot once, especially during election season, about hot issues, their takes on those issues, and it's typically posted. So I think that's all I have.
I have one thing, if I can, really quick. On Frank Kranz's comment about getting together to clean out the thing. If at any point, I would think that the best practice would be to let us know in the office, and we can put out something on the website or on their particular page about, hey, there's a cleanup day. If you'd like to join, please come. That way there's kind of like a notice out there. So there's no sign of impropriety going on there. I think that would just be a better practice to do.
That's a great idea, Dorothy. And a lot of, Frank, what you were talking about, a lot of things, don't be afraid to call Dorothy and ask her a question, or especially Robert too, and ask and say, hey, do you guys have any ideas about this? And they have, both of them have a lot of experience with this, and you can always even ask the mayor because you're not on the council, or you can ask another council member what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I'm not afraid to do, I've taken it as a personal challenge to pester those folks as much as I can.
Perfect. Okay. Now you should be doing that.
And then Heather, what about off-site meetings at somebody's house, a brewery, a wine store, an impromptu get together of the committee members discussing items?
So that should not happen. You can have a offsite social gathering, but there shouldn't be a gathering, like a meeting at the brewery, unless you're going to notice it and let the members of the public come into the brewery as well and sit at the table with you or at the bar and talk about it. That shouldn't happen. But a social gathering is fine, as long as you're talking about social things and not business coming before that board or that committee.
And again, I'm just playing devil's advocate. Is there any other?
I was going to say the mayor and Tony talking about politics. That's great, but that doesn't have to be noticed. I'm not sure that I'd like to come see that though. Actually, I think that'd be fun.
How about a decision?
Anytime, Heather.
I'm going to put the brewery on permanent notice.
As long as you guys are buying the wine and or the beer.
I'm in.
So Heather, how about a decision that's already been made? Can they discuss amongst themselves about a certain decision that has been voted on?
Yes, the problem is that's fine to talk about something that's already happened. The problem is sometimes things that have already happened come back up again. Like you have an agreement with somebody, a development agreement, and then it has to be amended at some point to address something else. So it's better practice not to, but
Right.
I've heard differing opinions on that once it's done, you can talk about it, but just be careful that it's not something that's going to come back up again for action by the council or a committee.
And one more thing I'd like to say is during meetings, do not accept or send any text messages. That was the purpose for the text gate in Orange County.
Yes.
So when you're up there and discussing items and making decisions, if a resident or anybody else is texting you, make sure you document it, but do not read it, or respond.
Yeah, correct. All of the commissioners got fined for that.
It's okay to like look at your phone, right? Like sometimes my phone lights up and I'm like, I gotta make sure my husband's not calling, there's an emergency.
Oh, absolutely. Brandy, that's fine. What happened, I mean, going a little bit further in the text gate, the commissioners deleted their texts and, said that that wasn't business. I mean, it was clearly county business. So that's fine. And never, just don't throw your stuff away on your phone either.
It was also lobbyists that were texting them, and the mayor was asking for advice on how to get out of a tough spot.
Right.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
But an example would be if there's a tree issue and some member from the tree board is texting you to ask this question or to raise this concern during the meeting,
Right.
that just can't happen.
Yeah, I tell my mother every month, I'm like, don't text me, don't call me. It's council night. And I swear to God, 15 minutes into the meeting and my mother calls. So I'm always like having to make sure my phone's on silent. But yeah. And so then one other thing I would ask is, and I know it's on some of the next stuff, but it's only from when I become council, right? So if I have text history from 3 years ago about a question that I may have asked to, or say 3 months ago, and Bob McKinley wasn't on council and I wasn't on council, and I wrote him a text then during a council meeting, that would be irrelevant because neither one of us were council at the time.
Correct. Brandy, you have a responsibility to keep your public records, but they are public records only when you are the council member. So if you were emailing Robert at that time or the mayor at that time, they would be responsible for keeping those public records when you were a resident of the city, not on the council.
Okay.
Yeah. And another example too is, if you're going to a birthday party, or a retirement party and you're RSVPing, that's not a public record.
Okay.
That would be exempt because it has nothing to do with any town business.
right.
Okay.
I think the thing that often happens is you can be at that harmless birthday party when another committee member or another council person in front of two other people may say something, either intentionally or unintentionally, that now you're in a predicament. And that's where you've got to kind of back out and get away from that, because it can happen when you're not paying attention. It can happen, after folks have had a few drinks or what have you. So it's really just a lot of this is about looking out for yourself and looking out for your fellow elected officials. Much like, the minute you're elected, right? It's on election night. Now you're an elected council person. That's the moment that sunshine law begins for you.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. See no additional questions. We can move on, Heather.
All right. Okay. So now we're talking about records. So what you need to know here is every record that is made or received in connection with town business is a public record. All council members, all committee members, the mayor, town employees must permit inspection and copying of public records. Records are not limited to just like what you have on a piece of paper. They include your text, your emails. Again, like what Robert just said, as long as they're made or received in connection with official business, not birthday party, that type of thing. Includes YouTube videos, Facebook, Instagram posts, and TikTok and all that stuff if it's about town business. Public records have to be retained for certain periods of time. It depends on what the record is. to say how long you have to keep it. Like employee records have to be kept forever. Ordinances, signed ordinances have to be kept forever. Things that Robert's notes that say, you know, how long or when he's going to be meeting with such and such is a transitory note that can be thrown away that day. There's just, it depends on the record. There are specific processes under state law that tell you how long you have to keep it. And Dorothy is probably an expert on that. She has all that information if you need it. Here is the big thing that a lot of folks get tripped up on. It doesn't matter where the record is. If it's a public, if it's about town business, if it's in your Gmail account, if it's on your private computer, in your private phone, and it is about town business, it is a public record. And public record applies to all of the items that you have with respect to your correspondence with members of the public, a committee member, a council member, a mayor, with employees, with consultants, contractors, legal counsel, and anybody else involved in town business. Purely personal emails, like we were just talking about, even if they're on your town-owned device, are not public records, but there's no expectation of privacy, of course, for communications that you would have on a town-owned device. Public records include the metadata that's in your Word document, things like that. There's no unfinished business exemption. So like when Dorothy's doing the drafts of your agendas or your meeting minutes, I'm sorry, that is a public record. As soon as she starts to make those and she circulated those are public records. A public record request can be verbal, written, emailed by any person at any time for any or no reason. You cannot ask the person requesting the records to provide their name. They don't have to tell you why they want the records. And if you receive a public records request, you should let Dorothy know immediately. I don't think you get, as individual council members, directly public records requests. I think they probably go to all of you, but if you do, like I said, forward that to Dorothy or Robert immediately. For the two topics that we just talked about, the Sunshine Law and with public records law violations, they can be pretty strict. You have the state attorney or a grand jury can be involved. Private parties can sue. Penalties can include jail time, which can be 1 year in jail for a knowing violation. Fines for an unintentional violation. They did find that the text gate for the county commissioners was unintentional, that they unintentionally deleted those. There can be attorney's fees, trial, and of course, nasty press coverage for violations. All right, and then so a lot of times folks get confused, the public records laws, like I said, again, those apply to records. Your Sunshine Law applies to your meetings. And if anybody has questions on records.
Can you clarify that if somebody's using their personal phone for town business and there's some kind of litigation that comes up, can that personal laptop or phone be subpoenaed?
Absolutely. Like I said, it's the nature of the record. It doesn't matter where you put it. It's a much better idea to use your town email address versus your private. And you can use your private email address if you want to conduct town business, but it's a much better idea to use your town email address and try to keep everything in one section. I don't know how it works for the town with respect to town devices versus personal devices for the council, but I would expect you all have your own personal phones that you might respond to emails, but try to keep it so that you're using your council email in case there is a public records request, then your IT folks can pull those requests and responsive emails pretty quickly.
And then Heather, are the notes that they take during a town council meeting public record?
So personal notes, I'm sorry, that's my dog. If that's bothering anybody, I can mute it for a moment. Personal notes that a council member takes for their own memory, their own recollection, are not going to be subject to a public records request. Now, when you have personal notes that you go ahead and type up on the computer and then send them to Robert, that's a public record at that point. But just your personal notes, you can keep those and they're not public records.
That's interesting because I know some people thought that differently, but I have a question. So for like the laptop, like I do use the town's email account, and I don't use my personal email anymore. So IT could just pull that and give it to him. So what about, for example, like sometimes I might request plans and specs from Brad, and he'll send me either a link or the documents attached. Those are public record documents that Robert and Dorothy and them would have already. So if someone requested, you know, like if they requested the emails I had, obviously I could forward them to them if they're simple. If it's something bigger, I would let, you know, Robert and them know. But, you know, do I have to provide access? I guess would I have to hand over my laptop so they can see whatever documents I might have downloaded?
You don't have to hand over your laptop. What you're going to get, if you get a public records request, it will be for all emails that you have with Brad or all emails about such and such topic. So the only time, I think what Dorothy was trying to say was for litigation, if you perhaps say, oh, I don't have anything on my personal phone about this, and the attorney on the other side says, yes, you do, then the court could possibly say, we need to see your personal phone.
And Brandy, that goes to, again, if you need a document, it's best to go through Dorothy or I, number one, so we can clarify, you know, when we take a look at billings, that we're keeping the billings down from our various vendors, whether it be Wade Trim, Gray Robinson, PDCS, or somebody else. So it's easier just to go through us, and then we can get you the documents that you need. So if there is a PR request, then it's easier for us to get that from my venture, as opposed to going around and talking to Brad or talking to Heather or somebody else to figure out when this occurred or what were they looking for.
Okay. So then my other question would be with regards to the phone, because if you took my phone, I would be crippled. So like on my phone, for example, I created, you know, a phone number that's just tied to a Gmail account, so that all texts, and I mean, phone calls, I still get phone calls on my regular number, but like as far as text goes, you know, I've told everyone if it's official business, you know, text me through that so that they're not texting at me at my private cell phone number. So in that situation, it's like it's a Gmail account that I can receive, you know, text and SMS on. So can I just hand over access to that, or they would still try to take my phone?
I don't think you're going to have an instance where someone tries to take your phone, Brandy, unless you were to say, I don't have any records. That would be more of the, so, and one other thing you can do is if you, for instance, you have somebody who's been texting you about public business and then they're not texting you any longer, you could always take screenshots of those, send them to Dorothy, and then you can delete them off your phone if that makes you feel better too. And then Dorothy puts them in a special place and keeps them just in case there's ever a public records request.
Okay.
As someone who's done this for a couple months, you will save yourself a tremendous amount of aggravation if you just copy Dorothy on anything you get from the public, anything to do with town business. Nothing personal, of course, but like anything to do with town business, just copy Dorothy. And then when the public records request may come in, she has access to all that and can pull all that, and you don't even have to be bothered by it. So there's another good reason for that too, is Dorothy can bill her time. We volunteer, we can't bill our time. So there's a couple of advantages to doing it that way. And then also, if you are receiving texts on your personal phone, make sure that you set up your many text default settings are to erase everything after a particular period of time, typically 12 months. So my suggestion to everyone is that you put it on, there's a different setting that keeps it until you want it to be deleted. So after your service is done. So I highly recommend that you change that setting as well. That'll save you some grief possibly down the road.
What is the length of time we're supposed to keep those kinds of records?
Depends on what the record's about, Brandy. I mean, I think generally, Dorothy, it's 3 or 5 years, right?
Yes, it depends on the content.
Mm-hmm.
So for
For
text,
litigation, I mean, if we had, for instance, if you had emails or texts about the boathouse stuff, it could extend way past that because of the
Mhm.
fact that there's litigation right now. It really depends on the content of the record.
okay.
And
Thankfully,
once
that's
we
never
do-
me.
So I may be, and again, I apologize if I'm a little out of line here. Don't hesitate. But if you're getting text messages about litigation, I would highly
Oh,
discourage.
I'm not.
that.
But
Make
yes.
sure
Just an
that-
example, Mayor, I'm sorry.
Um,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's different when, someone's reaching out to you and, saying, hey, is there a way to get to a compromise, blah, blah, blah. But, when you get to a situation where you're in active litigation, you do not want to be taking text messages from anybody on those particular topics.
Okay. And if they send an email, just forward it to Dorothy. And if they ask me
Absolutely.
anything, thank you for your input.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, we had Mandy with her hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, my quick question is, you mentioned keeping all the records. So say we get an agenda, but we don't write on it. I've been stuffing everything in a bin underneath my bed, or magazines that we get that are in our mailbox and stuff like that. We're supposed to keep all of that? Even if we don't write on it?
No, you don't need to keep all that, Mandy. That's more,
Okay.
as
I
long
don't
as,
think to throw anything out.
yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, I don't want to create people stacking things up in their house. No, not at all. No, as long as it's the types of communications that you would have with just you and a resident, or you and a committee member, or that kind of thing that's about town business. And like I said, the easiest thing to do, if you feel like you've got too many of them, just send them to Dorothy.
It's fine.
then you
No,
can
I don't
delete
have a
them.
problem saving all of that.
Yeah.
That's not a problem. It was the paper, the magazines, the agendas that
Yeah.
don't have anything written on them.
You can toss all that stuff.
Okay, yay, thank you.
I don't know, see anything additional on the public records?
All right, now the code of ethics. That applies to council members, mayor as well, committee members, and certain employees. And that's the reporting employees like Robert and Dorothy and any of your officers. So this is a very brief summary about what is in the ethics code. So if you have something which makes you think you should ask a question, please do ask. And Robert is great at answering these questions. Dorothy's really good at answering these questions. Reach out to them first and they'll let you know if we need to get involved. So don't use your position with the town as a council member, a committee member, to secure anything special for yourself, your family, friends, or anyone else. You should not do business with the town. Your company that you're with, or you personally, should not do business with the town. I'm not talking about volunteering. I'm talking about your company. Your family shouldn't do business with the town or with a business or agency doing business with the town. And there cannot be any conflict between your employment and your town position. You can't take a job with a company doing business with the town. And don't use information now or in the future which you've learned from your town position to gain a special advantage for you or your family or anyone else. You can't accept a payment to speak or write for an organization. as, for instance, as the mayor or as the vice mayor or a council member. Reasonable expenses can be paid though. And you cannot hire, promote, or advocate for your relatives to get a job with the town. General rule about voting, you must vote on all town issues. If it is your first night as a council member and you don't know anything about what you're voting on, you can abstain. You can only abstain from voting if you have an actual conflict of interest or if there appears to be a conflict of interest. You must disclose on any issue if the council's vote would benefit or hurt you, your relative, your business partner, your employer, your client, your customer, your parent company, subsidiary company, or sister company of your employer or your client. If you have a conflict of interest, Dorothy always has these forms with her, unless you may have already filled it out in advance. If you have a voting conflict, you must abstain. Again, you may abstain if you have the appearance of a conflict of interest, but for either reason, you have to file a Form 8B to fill it out and file it with Dorothy. Penalties for violating the code of ethics are impeachment. You can be removed from your office. You can have your salary reduced, which as a council member, that's not much. You can forfeit your salary, forfeit 1/3 of your salary a month. You can have a civil penalty up to $10,000, and you might have to pay back triple the value of a gift from a political committee if you are found to have violated the code of ethics. Right, the code of ethics is a little bit, it's kind of complicated. A lot of it is that doesn't feel right in your mind. I have the number for the Commission on Ethics at the very end. Sometimes someone doesn't want to ask a question from Robert or Dorothy or me. You can always call the Commission on Ethics. They do not police. They are very responsive. If you call them, they will have an answer for you typically on something complicated within the next few hours, especially if you say, hey, this issue is coming before the council tonight for a vote. So it's a great tool to have just in case you have a question. All right, did anybody want to ask anything about the code of ethics?
Mandy has a question.
Sorry, I do have a question. Occasionally we go out with friends and we'll take turns paying for each other's meals, but it has nothing to do with me being council. It's just something we do. How do I deal with that? Is that a conflict of interest?
It's not a conflict of interest. It's in the next section that we're going to talk about right now.
Okay.
It depends on how much you eat, Mandy, and what you eat. If you have lobster, then you might have to report it. We'll go over it. I'll tell you I'll tell you next. But if you get a gift that looks like that, then yeah, you're going to be in big trouble. Although you can probably just drive away quickly.
Yeah, I'd probably leave town if I got a gift like that. No, just kidding.
It looks like Malbec's new car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, so we will talk about gifts now. Gifts are basically anything of value. I mean, a lot of times you'll see in the news, people get tickets for things. Forgiveness of debt can be a gift. Any service, plants, flowers can be a gift. Depends on the value. So here's where you need to be cautious. And this goes for having dinner out or any other types of gifts. Taking gifts, anything of value for you or your family over $100 can be an ethics violation. Again, this is kind of more of a complicated area and it gets really, really in depth, but here are the general rules. Don't ask for a gift, especially from a person working with or associated with town business. Don't ask for anything. Don't ask a lobbyist, a vendor. We're a vendor, like Ray Robinson's a vendor of the town. A customer or anyone doing business with the town for a gift. All right, if you get a gift that is worth over $100, you have to disclose that. So Mandy, it depends on the price of what it is or the amount of what it is that you've eaten. Did you get a really expensive bottle of wine and finish that? Then
Well,
you
like-
have to disclose it.
Okay, so like, for instance, we went out with a couple the other night and we paid for dinner and it was well over $100, but they got the dinner before. So we were just taking turns. So that's what I'm saying, but it's couples that we hang out with. They have nothing to do with the town. They have nothing to do with, they're not vendors, they're not. So that's just what I'm trying to,
Sure, you're supposed
Understand.
to, as a elected official, you are supposed to report any gift that you get, which would be food, and you accept it, and if it's over $100, there is a form, and I can send that to you. If it is a prohibited gift, you don't have to report it. So if you're violating the law, you don't have to report that. But yes, if you and your husband are taken out to dinner and it's worth over that, you are supposed to put that in a form and file that with the Commission on Ethics.
okay,
It's not prohibited, you're just
Duly
supposed to
noted.
report it.
okay.
Mayor, I see Frank Kranz has another question.
Absolutely. Frank, go ahead.
Okay, so there are clubs, Rotary Club has dues. It has a membership type called honorary membership, which has no dues. Comes with no responsibilities, comes with nothing. I think comes with a magazine. Is that something that the recipient of that membership would have to report?
So Frank, let me make sure I understand this correctly. In this instance, you would be paying the Rotary?
No, there's no money exchanged. It's strictly an honorary acknowledgement, basically. It's more than anything. So there is no that class of membership in the Rotary Club has no dues, no money's exchanged.
I don't see an issue with anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah, as long as there's no quid pro quo or on that.
Easy
where-
for you to say.
Yeah, I know. Because I'm an honorary member, and but it doesn't come with an expectation that something would favor one party or the other.
Not at all.
So for gifts that you would get, you being a committee member or a council or mayor, if you get a gift that's worth over $25 from a lobbyist or a vendor again would be anybody that does business with the town like Gray Robinson, then the lobbyist or vendor has to disclose that gift, and we were supposed to tell you. So if I was to buy, Mandy, if I'm buying you a super nice bottle of wine that is $99.99, I have to tell you, I'm supposed to tell you that I am giving you this and I need to disclose it. And your name, because you're not disclosing that, I'm disclosing it. So your name's going to be on a disclosure form. If the gift is over $100, it's a prohibited gift. So again, what the law says, and it's kind of strange, is if it's a prohibited gift, nobody reports it. It's just unlawful at that point. It's a very unusual law. Anybody have any question about gifts? Oh, and one other thing too, which I'm sure you'll learn in your 4-hour training, is if you were to get tickets, like if I was to give you, Mandy, a bottle of $125 bottle of wine, you could pay that down, and then I would report, you could give me $30 and I would report $95 on the form. But it just, like I said, it gets a little bit complicated there.
All right, no, this is, okay, so then I have a question, then will we get tickets from Wine and Dine? Why is that okay? Yeah, I mean, do we have to report that? Do we have to, because we all got free tickets to go to Wine and Dine.
That's a
That's
town.
it. Yeah, go ahead, Robert.
Oh no, it's a town sponsored event.
Okay, so even if it's friends, they're not lobbyists, they're not vendors, they have nothing to do with the town, I still have to report it. Okay.
Relatives are exempt.
Relatives are exempt.
Yes, there's
Okay.
actually a really good explanation of what you do report, what you don't report, how you value what it is that you've gotten, like if you've had several drinks, how you put a value on that on the actual disclosure form itself. So those are sometimes really helpful. You know, there's like it's a whole side of the form that's on the Commission on Ethics website that you can read.
So
that I
does
can
that
send to
go
you.
with our financial thing in July, or is that something we have to, like, we have to have dates and receipt, like,
It's an annual disclosure form unless
Okay.
it's, I think the lobbyist and the vendors disclose quarterly, but yours, like what you're reporting, I believe is annual.
okay, okay. All right, thank you.
All right, last but not least, your new financial disclosure requirements. This is just really a basic summary. You have to, obviously this year, Form 6 is your full and public disclosure of financial interest. You have to file that. And then 6F is would be your last one for your last year in office. And this year, starting on January 1st, all of your forms, your Form 6s and your Form 2, must be filed electronically. And I think Dorothy's got everyone set up already for getting your electronic requirements, because you're not filing paper anymore. You're filing it all online. Dorothy, you've got that, right?
Yes, ma'am. It went to the division and they have updated everybody's email. So it will be coming through your email because they have to file it electronically. There is no more paper.
And I took a look at the website earlier today, and it looks like it's pretty straightforward. But I think once you get the email from the FDMS, then you have to go ahead and create an account with them. So it's an extra step for all of the things that you do for the town without receiving any payment for all of those things. So,
Right.
another thank you from the state of Florida. So they upped the fine, or the maximum penalty, for failing to do your financial disclosure on time. The max is now $20,000 versus $10,000. And they do have a $25 per day fine, and they will fine you, because I know there were some folks on one of the committees at the town that were fined years and years ago. And then the Commission on Ethics has to notify everyone no later than June 1st of this year. That's what Dorothy was saying, that she's already given your emails to the Commission on Ethics, and they'll let you know that all of those things need to be filed.
And for committees, you mean DRB?
Yes, yeah, I think that's the only one, right?
Yeah.
That is required. And here's the information for the Florida Commission on Ethics, and they are fantastic. I have called them with some very complicated scenarios before, and they can come up with the previous opinions they've done pretty quickly for you. So you can always call them and ask them questions. And that is it. Now I think you probably can use this whole hour and 20 minutes towards your 4 hours of training.
Thank you very much, Heather. Any last minute questions, comments, concerns from anyone participating this evening?
I have one question. I know it's, I think, on the agenda for March anyway, but in regards to Form 6, and if we need to talk about it in March, that's fine. So I know at the meeting you missed, Heather, we talked about that there's this lawsuit about Form 6 that company down in South Florida is doing, the lawyers down there. If we join because I don't know if we're going to discuss this or if it's just going to vote or what in March. So if we discuss it as a council and decide we want to join in that lawsuit or not join in that lawsuit as a council, it's just basically giving them the funds to help fight it, right? It's like we're not suing as a council if we decide to be on the lawsuit for punitive damages or something like that. It's just because even if we don't join the lawsuit and they find that, okay, it is an invasion of privacy, we don't have to do it. We don't have to do it whether we're on the lawsuit or not, because it becomes law, correct?
Yes, correct. But my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, is that the council decided to join the lawsuit, and I am going to be putting forward a resolution for the council to sign, and then the lawsuit's already been filed. I did forward it to you guys, and what will happen is the lawsuit will then be amended to add the town of Windermere as a plaintiff.
And Heather, for clarification too, it'd be as the town of Windermere, and they would not be individually identified.
Correct. In some of the cities where there were individual elected officials that wanted to join and their city said, we're not going to join, there is a $2,000 fee for an elected public official or constitutional officer to join individually. And then there was a form that's required for that one individual elected public official or constitutional officer that they have to fill that out. But in your case, it's the town that's going to be joining as a plaintiff.
So in any scenario, if there's maybe a 4-1 vote or a 3-2 vote, whether or not they want to join the lawsuit, but it'd be in the affirmative, it would just be the town of Windermere, not the individual named in that lawsuit.
Correct. That's my understanding of what you guys voted for. Is that right?
They consented. We
So we
haven't
didn't,
voted.
yeah, we
Okay.
didn't vote.
That's why I was confused. Yeah, so we
Okay.
just talked about it, and then, so the resolution, when that comes forward, that's what our actual vote is then technically on the resolution that's coming in March.
Right, exactly. I'll have the resolution for you, and then you'll take the official action at that in March. And then if you all decide by a majority vote to join, then we'll send that resolution and the $10,000 whenever they want it to the law firm, the South law firm.
All right, thank you.
Tom?
No, that answered my question. Thank you.
Mandy?
Quick question. So we join, if we decide to join the lawsuit, and let's say it goes forever and July 1st comes, what do we file and what fines are we gonna get if we don't file? Then if we've joined the lawsuit, I guess that's my question.
So right now, Mandy, what the law says is that you have to file Form 6. And I would not, I mean, as your town attorney, I would advise you to follow what the law says. I mean, unless you're in this lawsuit and you've got direction from the attorney who is going to be your attorney for that lawsuit, and he says, I suggest you do X, Y, and Z, then you'll have to make a decision at that point.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure, because if we're joining this and then we turn around and still file Form 6 anyway, what does that do? To the
Yeah, and
lawsuit
he
and-
might advise, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a bad thing, but if you file Form 6, you're complying with the law and you're not going to have to fight these penalties that you could possibly face. But that'll be something that I'm sure that he'll advise you, the attorney that is leading it will advise you on.
Yeah, until there's some injunctive relief or anything like that, provided by the court, I would still go ahead and fill out those forms until directed by the court otherwise.
Perfect.
I'm going to ask one other question if I can specific about Form 6, just to make sure I'm clear, because I did the little training on their website. So, for example, I'm not currently working. So do I have to put my husband's salary, and do I have to put my 401k and his 401k?
My understanding from what's required with respect to reporting on the Form 6 is anything that you, Brandy, have access to, like if you have a joint bank account with your husband where you can pull money out of it,
Yes.
that's going to have to be shown.
Okay.
I don't know about your husband's 401k. Maybe it talks about if you're a beneficiary, that I don't, that specific, I do not know.
Okay.
But it's a snapshot of what you have on
Okay.
one specific day of the year.
Okay, thank you.
I will definitely help you with however I can, though, if you have specific questions. But I bet the League of Cities, and everybody else will be able to help with those as well too.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
No,
Staff?
sir. Thank you, Heather.
All
No,
right.
just thank you.
Thank you,
Heather.
Heather. Appreciate it. It's very informative, and I think it's important that we all stay up on the latest and greatest because we get more information and learn as we go as well. Since there's nothing else for the meeting this evening, we will close our town council workshop this evening at 7:25 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you for listening, everyone.